Welcome to Hyde Talk. I'm Bob Felt. Hyde Talk is an open and honest conversation about all things character, leadership, sports. Our guest today is Stefan Jensen, the athletic director at the Hyde School. Stefan, welcome to Hyde Talk.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
So, let's just jump right into it today. I think the theme of today is talking sports, athletics. The power of athletics and sports and high school students and the benefits that it has. But maybe just sort of start with you. How did you get in the job that you're currently in, and how did that come to fruition for you being an athletic director?
Yeah, I think it stemmed from I played a lot of sports growing up. My family's heavily involved in sports, and my dad's a coach and longtime coach. All my siblings have played. We just grew up playing all the time, and basically, I started playing football when I was very young. It was my go-to sport. And then, kind of in high school, I felt like I was not the most talented, but I was always working towards something. And my coaches necessarily, I guess there were certain times where I felt like things weren't handled correctly. So I went in, so I knew right then and there that, I wanted to go to school to do sports management because I felt like I could make an impactful change on students that, I struggled with as a high school kid, that struggled with some of the things that were, taking place at my high school. And so I felt like going into it, if I could go to college and go into this career, I could make some real changes. And I think that's really helped me become what I've been doing now for 11 years. And it's been a growing process, but it's also been very rewarding.
Now, so you went to Endicott College, Go Gulls. And you played college athletics,
yes.
Correct?
Yeah, so I played 4 years of high school football, and then I was lucky enough to play 2 years of college football. Great experience, met most of my best friends during that time. And then I went into coaching after my sophomore year to coach at a local school down there, public school. And
you said your dad is a longtime coach. I mean, how did that sort of translate? What did you see from your dad that sort of brought you into the sort of world of athletics and coaching, and
so
how did that play out?
My dad was a Division I wrestler at Michigan State. He had his challenges with, coaching, his coaching expertise there. And so he basically instilled a lot of us, to be humble, but also to really push ourselves in the athletic realm. And he's been a great mentor he's been coaching for now 30 years, and the impact he's made on his wrestlers, but, has also instilled it into us as one of 4 kids of his. And it's, he's been someone that's really pushed our family and pushed our love for sports, but also taught us a lot of things within sports that has helped us become the people we are today.
What would if you could pick one thing that you've learned from your dad in regards to sports? And when I say sports, it's not about going on to play college sports, but maybe a life lesson. You mentioned humble. Certainly picked that up from you. Is there anything else that you've...
I think, I think he always instilled into us that you had to do the little things, but also the things when no one's looking, and not just for the spotlight. And he also, I think a lot of us, at least me and my siblings, at one point wanted to quit, and he never let us do that. And I think if he had let me do that once in my life, I don't know if I'm doing this today there was a lot of times where I reflect back on that moment, especially in high school football, where I was ready to throw in the towel and he just wouldn't let me. And so I've used that as an opportunity to, grow as a person, but also help anybody else that might be going through that.
So talk about your job. So you're the athletic director, and then we'll get into talking about kids and sports.
Yeah.
But what's the thing that you love most about your job as an athletic director and working with coaches and working with students?
I love working with our coaches, but I think the thing that I get the most excited about every day is working with the students. I think it's seeing them go out, because we have them do a sport every season at Hyde, and so seeing these kids go after something that they never thought they could do is incredible to see. And as challenging as it can be to sometimes get the students motivated to do it, but once they see they can do it, I don't know, it's just a really rewarding experience. And I'm very proud of, how some of these kids have really come along and grown into the people they are.
So one of the things at Hyde is, for the viewers that don't know, is that at our school, at Hyde School, we require 3 seasons of competitive athletics. Every kid is on a sports team. And, in your, you've been doing this, 11 years. What have you seen, being involved in sports every semester? How do you see that contributes to sort of physical, emotional well-being in students? What are the benefits to that?
I think it's very helpful to their everyday, I don't know if it's health-wise, but I just think it's they're much more, I would say, motivated throughout the day. I think they feel more a part of the community. The things they've learned by being on a team. There's a lot of things that benefit them. Maybe they don't recognize it in the moment, but then as soon as, at the end of the season, they're like, wow, that was such a great experience. I'm so happy I did that.
Yeah. And I think just like any school in the United States, you have kids who certainly lean into things that they're interested in. So you have kids who lean into academics. You have kids who certainly lean into sports. I mean, when I was a high school student, I leaned into sports. I often leaned out of academics or the arts, things like that. How do you help students who don't see themselves as, I'm an athlete? How do you help them sort of learn to lean in to athletics? Not that they're going to go on and play college athletics, things like that, but how do you sort of coach kids and get them engaged in that to see the benefits of being a participant?
No, I think it's a good question. I think it can be very challenging depending on the student, but I also know there's a way to reach every single person. I just think that you got to be creative sometimes. We have multiple levels for most sports, and so maybe a student that really doesn't see himself as an athlete, maybe he or she starts on the JV level and you develop it, but also stems from the coaches. Like, what excitement do you create do you make them feel part of the team? As a JV, I coach a lot of the JV teams here, so my biggest thing is
one of the all-time great JV coaches in Hyde history, I will add. We'll get to JV soccer and JV basketball, but keep going.
Yes. But I just think there's a lot of the kids I work with that don't see themselves as the athletes. And so how do we set the foundation day one of, okay, this is how a team operates. This is what we do. And, and make them feel a part of it. And then at the end, they might hit a buzzer beater 3-pointer or something along those lines. And they're like, wow, that was really great. I'm so happy I did that. And they would have never done that if they didn't do the competitive seasons every year.
Let's talk about, because obviously there's levels. You have varsity teams, you have JV teams. The great thing that I love about here is every kid makes a team. And what are your motivation strategies with like JV soccer, which I love watching JV soccer at Hyde because it's a fun group. But how do you really get those kids engaged and excited to be involved in whether it's JV soccer? What's the method to your madness?
For myself personally as JV coach, I just try to bring the energy every day, and I try to create excitement. I try to give the kids hope. I think some of the kids that I work with have never seen success in sports, so I try to find moments where they can see that, whether it's they're leading the stretch line or they're starting a game or, I just think there's ways that generate, and then you got to use your talented kids that kids have actually played. You got to utilize them. Okay, how can you mesh with this kid who's never played? How can you make them feel part of the team? And I don't know. I'm personally, I feel like I've always been a JV athlete. I've certainly played varsity football, but like I've always been more of the JV type of athlete, and so my siblings have not been. They've been very varsity mindset, and so I've been the opposite almost. And so I don't know. I just feel like I've always been able to figure that type of kid out, and it's worked, and that's probably why I'm always with the JVs, which I love doing, by the way.
Can you think? I mean, this is. Can you think of a kid or maybe a couple kids that just never saw themselves as athletes, but then got involved in the community of sports and engagement that really really showed something, that really overcame a fear of getting involved in sports, that really helped change, help them?
Yeah, I can think of a few people. Well, not a few. I mean, there's been a lot, but I think, definitely I've seen most of it, with a kid like, there's a kid named Aiden, and so he definitely was not a kid that viewed himself as an athlete, but he molded into our team and ended up being one of our key leaders, and how much he got out of it. He still, like, even after the season, was so thankful for the experience, and he was just somebody had no, he would never say he was an athlete, but he came into it with a great attitude, and kids were very supportive, and he was often the guy leading, giving the speeches at the end of the games. I mean, it was a huge transformation. That's what I love most about these programs.
Yeah. And what, off that, when you think about sports and engaging kids in sports, how do you think that fosters sort of a sense of school spirit? I know you're big on school spirit. How do you think having all the kids engaged in sports fosters this sense of community and school spirit?
Yeah, I think it's such a key. I mean, that's one of my biggest things in my job. I feel like is to generate the school spirit, and it depend. I mean, these kids, them being on part of a team helps generate that, and I'm a big person on having team support. We don't have a lot of fans here. I mean, these kids are from all over the place, so our team support each other, and so that's why, boys soccer is going to go over the girls soccer game and watch that game. And then cross country, we'll have 100 kids helping time the race. And it's just so important to, like, how we can make the day positive and everybody feels supportive. And yeah, school spirit's a big thing for me.
Do you feel, I mean, one of the things, playing sports can really, do you see that being involved in athletics on a daily basis can help kids with, time management skills, helping them academically? What do you see the benefits with that, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest. I would say it's the most helpful thing. Like, in terms of personally, like that was how I stayed motivated. That's how I stayed on task, and I think having a more of a structure, and I know in college, like, you had the mandatory study hall for college athletics, and so that helped me. I mean, my best grades were during the season. I think if you have a team that's really, you have kids motivated to do their sport, but then you also got to do the work in the classroom too, and it can't be one or the other. It's got to be both. And I always feel that if everybody's doing what they need to, structure wise and schedule-wise, they're going to be better off, because that's how I've felt, I've operated the best. When you're doing things off the field, you're going to be better on the field.
One of the things about Hyde that we have this character and leadership program that we focus, we talk about, we put it into action with everything that we do here. But just take athletics. What would you say would be one of the 5 words or big character building moments that you can see with kids that really pay dividends for them for their future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like 5 words. I just think sports are such an ultimate, revealer of your character, and I think it comes out in sports no matter how you see it. I'm big on wrestling because I think it's such a key. You can't hide out there. It's you either put the work in or you didn't, and you also you win or lose by yourself. You're not blaming on anybody else. And I'm not taking it. I only played team sports, so I love team sports too. But I just think there's something about the wrestling when you get in that ring, like, you know, can you overcome certain things? Did you put the effort in that you needed to? And it's just such. And then in team sports, you know, are you a good teammate? Did you learn what you need to learn? Do you trust each other? And I don't know. I don't necessarily know if there's a word for it. I just know you can see who you are in sports, and it comes out, and you can't hide from it.
Yeah. Let me little pivot here, because you know something that's big now in high school athletics and college athletics is sportsmanship, which I know that's something that's really, you know, good sportsmanship, not bad sportsmanship. But you know, what's your take on sportsmanship now at schools, college, high schools? And where do you see that, and what do you see as the problem? Because it's some of the fans and parents has been atrocious with the things that I've seen. What's your take on that, and what do you think is the solution? And what has worked for you here at Hyde?
I don't know if there's necessarily a solution right away. I think what we generally do, and we haven't been perfect every year, but you know, we harp on it right away, and like that is a strong point to our coaches, our community. Like this is not what we do here, and it's not like that everywhere, unfortunately. I mean, you can go to any away game and it could happen here. I'm not saying we don't struggle with it at times too, but you know, we feel like we deal with it in the right manner, and our kids, maybe they have a tough first game, but they know that we're gonna come down on them or we're gonna deal with it the next day or that day in general. I mean, how many times have we've had in like the past 10 years even we've talked to them immediately after the games, you know, and we just we want our kids to be represented. We want the name of Hyde School to be represented accordingly, and I think we do a really good job of, even if we slip up, we deal with it. I can't speak for other schools. I know that we focus on what we can control, and you know, I think we do a good job of that.
Was your just growing up, back to your dad, you know, and his coaching and influence on you guys, was that something that you learned from him? I mean, I've watched him in the wrestling. He's very mild-mannered. Yeah. Certainly comes across that way when I watch him coach. But was that something, being a good sportsman and treating your opponent fairly, is that something that you and your siblings learned from him, and that's carried off into your coaching?
Yeah, I just think he always, you know, basically told us to keep our mouth shut. You know, you just went out and won the game. You didn't need to do the other stuff. And I'm not the guy that's going to stand there and point at the scoreboard and do that. But it's like, you know, we're always taught you got to do your job, and that's all that matters. And the result is, if you win, that's what matters. But it is difficult, I think, at times when kids are constantly in your face saying things to you. I think it's hard to keep, you know, just moving forward. But it's what he instilled in us since we were young, and I think I like to do a little trash talk, like when we're just doing intramural games. But I don't like doing that in varsity games. Hopefully, we can just go out and win the game and move forward and have class, and that's all I can hope for and want for our kids, because I think the other stuff is just it's gotten out of hand a little bit. I think it just seems like it's common everywhere, and people are starting to become immune to it, and it's not right. And I just want to, we as at Hyde School, just keep pushing, you know, that we represent something bigger than ourselves, and we're not just about the kids on the team.
Awesome. Last question. I think it's the last question, but we'll say last question. Obviously we've got all different types of students here at the school, and you have kids who have gone on to play, whether it's Division One athletics, Division Two athletics, Division Three athletics, playing club sports in college, which I think is still incredibly important, or intramural sports in college. But how do you sort of approach a student who comes to our school and doesn't see themselves as an athlete and is like, hey, Mr. Jensen, I know you're an athletic director, but I've never really seen myself as an athlete. I don't see the point. I'm not going to go on to play college athletics. What's the point in me being on the lacrosse team, the basketball team, wrestling, when I'm probably never going to do this ever again? How do you approach that? I mean, I know that's not the first time you've had a question, as I know you hear it a lot. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I could hear this question about 10 times a day, honestly. So, I think that was like one of the challenges I had with, a couple of kids on my JV basketball team a couple of years ago, is that they thought exactly the same thing. And I think just, making them see the bigger picture and not necessarily just, you're not an athlete, but you can help in a bunch of different ways. And, I'm glad you kind of brought this up, because it brings me back like 2 years ago or maybe it was even 3 years ago. I mean, your son was on the team, but I think about what the Hyde sports and Hyde team really is about is, this soccer team that had no business doing anything that year. They probably had maybe one soccer player, and I don't even know if your son considered himself a soccer player.
He didn't.
So, but I think we didn't have football. We basically just had soccer and cross country, and so
this was coming out of COVID.
This was coming out of COVID, so we had all these kids that had no business playing on soccer, and we had a brand new coach, and so they all decided that they were just gonna try out for soccer. They were gonna do something for bigger than themselves. And it's one of my favorite teams I've ever seen. And we didn't even win the New England Finals, but it was what they did as a unit is really, I think, telling of what we do every day at this place. Because it took basketball kids, football kids, maybe one soccer kid, lacrosse, everybody, but nobody. And we only had one true soccer player on that team. But they made a sacrifice for something bigger than themselves. Yeah. And I think that's the mold I'll never forget that team. And it was just special to see them just go after something together. And for them to barely get in the New England playoffs after like a very average season, but they got better each week. And then they squeaked out 2 games in the quarterfinals and semifinals, and then made it to the New England Finals. I'll still never know how, but I don't know. I think about that team a lot and how much it was amazing to see, and how proud
the
I
attitude,
felt.
the effort of those kids. And,
yeah.
I mean, Tyshawn playing soccer was something I will never forget.
Yeah.
But, that's awesome. Well, Stefan, it's great to have you here today. Appreciate your insights on all things sports. Yeah. And, to our viewers, you can check us out on all of our podcast stations, and we look forward to seeing you next time.